All right, there. We'll say good morning. Let's begin. So the shir this morning is dedicated by Yankee Statman in honor of the participants and the 1 year anniversary of the Shul Yarchei Kala, which Emirat Hashem will again take place in March. But today marks the 1 year anniversary of our first annual pilgrimage to Eretz Yisrael to learn and to grow and to do Chesed. And Halavai Ushavizoch Emirat Hashem to have many more events like that. And Yashikoach to the Statmans for the sponsorship. So we're picking up today's daf is Nun Tes. We are picking up the last two words on Nun Ches Amud Beis Amar Rav. So Rav said the following: Ana Havai, top of Nun Tes. Ana Havai b'minyana debei Rebbe. So I was part of the Beis Din of Rebbe. Now, if you take a look at Rashi, Rashi says over here, Ana Havai b'minyana de Rebbe. Rashi says, Ba'osa minyan shetiknu shekala kodem likach zacha. So we'll say, remember again, going back to our Mishnah. So the Mishnah discussed again the takana when it came to sikrikun, that if you went ahead and you bought from the sikrikun, so you went ahead and you paid a quarter ultimately to the original owner, and l'maisa again it would be yours. So Rav says, I was a member of that Beis Din, uminoi didi manu bereisha, and when tallying up the opinions, so they took my opinion first. They counted my opinion first from the members of the Beis Din. So the Gemara says, Rashi says, Mimani shalu tchila b'shura, kishani yoshvin ma da'ati nota. V'hu beinoni, lo menak gdolim, v'lo menak tanim, v'ani shamati shekatan shebohem haya. So the point over here that the Gemara is making, that Rav is making is, I was neither the greatest member of the Beis Din, nor was I the, I don't want to use the word lowest is the wrong, nor was I the most, I had the smallest member of the Beis Din, although none of that really makes sense, but you understand what I'm trying to get. I wasn't the greatest member, I wasn't the smallest member, I was kind of in the middle. Rashi says over here actually that he heard that Rav was actually the Katan Sheba, and was actually the least important member of the Beis Din. In any event, Rav is saying that when they went ahead and they decided the law of Sikrikun, they started with my opinion first. So the Gemara says, really, v'ha'anan tanan, but we learned, Dinei mamanis v'ataharos v'atumos maschilin min hagodol. So when it comes to a Beis Din adjudicating matters of monetary law, or ritual purity or impurity, they always begin by asking the opinion of the greatest member of the Beis Din. That's how it works with monetary law and ritual laws of ritual purity. However, v'dinei nefashos, when it comes to capital cases, maschilin min hatzad. So min hatzad ultimately means from the side, but what it really means is we start from the least important member of the Beis Din, the least prominent member, and we work our way up to the greatest member of the Beis Din. Look at Rashi, min hatzad. Minaktanim v'lo minagodol shelo yilmad chova v'ashar nichnon mipanav sholach lo kalav o mishum lo sa'an ha'ariv ubedin nefashos makmila lahaikar. So we'll say, so the important idea over here is, what's the concern? If we start with the opinion of the greatest member of the Beis Din, when it comes to capital cases, we're concerned that what? That everyone else is going to fall in line with him. And we don't want that. We want all of the members of the Beis Din to think independently. Therefore, we go ahead and when it comes to capital cases, we start from the least prominent member of the Beis Din and work our way up. So, but I'm sorry, Mammon apparently we're not worried because again, the logic behind it is that as important as Dinei Mammonis is, it doesn't carry the same weight. So can you imagine you're on the Beis Din and the greatest, most prominent member of the Beis Din goes ahead and weighs in on a capital case. This is literally a matter of life and death. Everyone else is going to be a little bit intimidated to go ahead and rule a little bit differently. Apparently that concern didn't apply by monetary law. But now for our purposes, remember again, so Rav is saying, I was the first judge consulted for my opinion. This is in a case of monetary law. Now we just established before that in monetary law, we look for the greatest, we start with the most prominent member of the Beis Din. So what's going on? Amar Rabba Bereid Rabba V'Tima Rapila Bereid Ravalos Shani Minyana Debei Rebbe Dekulu Minyanaihu Min Hatzad Havu Maschilin. So also this is actually quite interesting that the Beis Din of Rebbe had a different set of standard operating procedures, and that for every single court case, no matter what the topic of the case, they would go ahead and they would always start from the least prominent member of the Beis Din. This was just part of their standard operating procedures. So the Gemara says, Amar Now the truth is, we'll say this is not just something that Rebbe made up. If you take a look at Rashi, Rashi says over here, "Tikulu minyana min atzad maschilin mishum delo sa'ane al riv uksiv chaser belo yod v'darshinan lo sa'ane al rav lo sachlok al mufla sheba bezdin v'lo mukmil al reish dekrab din nefashas." I'm saying here's what's interesting. Now, Rashi quoted this pasuk before, "Lo sa'ane al riv." Lo sa'ane al riv literally means do not go ahead and quarrel regarding a halacha. So the Gemara darshans that to mean lo sa'ane al rav. Literally, don't quarrel with the greatest member of the basin. Now this pasuk is mentioned in the context of capital cases, of literally death penalty cases. So the Gemara darshans that lo sa'ane al riv, which is vocalized as lo sa'ane al rav, means don't have the greatest member of the Beis Din issue his opinion first when it comes to capital cases, because others will be afraid or others will be intimidated to issue a different opinion. Rebbe was of the opinion that lo sa'ana al riv / lo sa'ana al rav was a concept that applied to all cases adjudicated by a Beis Din. And therefore in the Beis Din of Rebbe, they always went ahead and started from the least prominent member of the Beis Din, and they gave the opinions like that. So this is just an interesting piece. V'amar Rabba b'rei Rava, v'timar Rav Hillel b'rei Rabbi Valos, mimos Yoshua v'ad Rebbe, lo matzinu Torah u'gedula b'makom echad. So this is actually a very interesting statement. So Rabba, the name of all these other Rabbanim, said that from the dates of Rebbe, from the days of Moshe Rabbeinu until Rebbe, we never found one person who possessed Torah and Gedula. So we'll say Torah represents Torah scholarship, Gedula represents leadership. From the times of Moshe Rabbeinu to Rebbe, there was never one person who was both the undisputed Talmid Chacham, ranking sage of the generation, and also the undisputed leader of the generation. Moshe Rabbeinu had that quality, Rebbe had that quality, but in between the two of them, no one else possessed this. What does that mean? What that means is they were great Talmidei Chachamim, of course, and they were great leaders, but there was no one person who was the ranking Torah scholar as well as the leader of the generation. So the Gemara says, that's true below. Ha Yoshua. But what about Yoshua? To which the Gemara says, Hava Elazar. So we'll say what we're looking for over here is someone ultimately, again, who was a singular personality. So Yoshua was the leader, and Yoshua was also Talmid Chacham. But when Yoshua was alive, there was also Elazar. So meaning Yoshua was not the ranking sage or the ranking leader by himself. Hahava Elazar. So the Gemara says, Hahava Elazar. But after Yehoshua died, Elazar was the ranking sage and the ranking leader who was left. Hava Pinchas. No, when Elazar was alive, there was still Pinchas. Bahava Pinchas. When Elazar died, there was just Pinchas. Havu Zekanim. The elders were there as well. Hahava Shaul. What about Shaul? So again, the idea. Shaul was the king and the ranking Talmid Chacham. Hava Shmuel. Shmuel was there also. Vahanach Nafshe. But Shmuel died during the lifetime. Shaul died during the lifetime of Shmuel. To which the Gemara says, Kulhu Shani Kamiran. We're looking for someone who throughout the entirety of his career was the singular personality who was both the undisputed leader as well as the greatest Talmid Chacham. So we'll say, so in all of these cases over here, these individuals, yes, for a certain number of years perhaps possessed the title of being the greatest Talmid Chacham as well as the leader, but they didn't possess that title throughout the entirety of their career. So the Gemara says, David. What about David HaMelech? Hava Ira Hayairi. David HaMelech's Rebbe, Ira Hayairi, was alive during his lifetime. Vahanach Nafshe. But Ira Hayairi predeceased David. He predeceased David. And therefore, Lamaisa, again, David was both the ranking sage as well as the leader. To which the Gemara says, again, Kulu Shani Karminon. Again, remember, we're looking for someone like Moshe or like Rebbe, who throughout all of the years that they were a leader were both the leader and the ranking sage. What about King Chizkiah? We'll say King Chizkiah was the leader, he was the king, and he was also the ranking sage. Oh, did I skip? I'm sorry, thank you. Shlomo. What about Shlomo HaMelech? So the Gemara says, Shimon ben Gera. There was Shimon ben Gera, remember, was the Rebbe of Shlomo HaMelech. By Vaha Katle, but remember, I'll say the interesting Maaseh where Shlomo executes Shimi ben Gera. So at the end of the day, again, there was a time where Shlomo was by himself, to which again the Gemara says, Kulu Shani Kamrinon. The Gemara says, again, remember, we're looking for someone who throughout the years of his leadership, was both the Talmid Chacham, the Talmid Chacham, as well as the leader. And again, although Shlomo had a period of that, it wasn't for the totality of his life. What about Chizkiah, King Chizkiah? Hava Shevna. There was Shevna. You know what I say? So Shevna was also, Shevna B'Michri was also again Talmid Chacham and leader. So the Gemara says, Ha'ikdil, but Shevna was killed. Kulu Shani Kamrinon. We'll say again, same answer. We're looking for individuals. The common denominator that we're looking for over here is someone who throughout the entirety of their years of leadership was both the Talmid Chacham as well as the leader. These individuals served in that capacity for some of their years, but not all of their years. Hava Ezra. What about Ezra? Have Nehemiah. There was Nehemiah. Nehemiah ben Chachalya. Amar Rav Acha Brei Rava. Af ani omeres. So too I say, Mimos Rebbe va'ad Ravashi lo matzino Torah ugdula b'makom echad. So we'll say apparently, like Moshe Rabbeinu and Rebbe, Rav Ashi was also one of these personalities who both was able to combine Torah and Gedula. So now you have Rav Acha Brei Rava saying, from the days of Rebbe until Rav Ashi, we did not find anyone who possessed Torah and Gedula, Torah learning, scholarship, and Gedula leadership in one place, Makom Echad. So we'll say, so now what you have over here is, you have Moshe Rabbeinu, Rebbe, and Rav Ashi. Right? Three singular individuals who combined Torah and Gedula in one place. So Gemara says, V'lo, is that true? V'ha hava Huna bar Nasan. What about Huna bar Nasan? Rabbi says, so Huna bar Nasan again, who was also Torah and Gedula in one place. To which the Gemara says, Shiny Huna bar Nasan, to make it Havakayif le Rav Ashi. As great as Rav Huna bar Nasan was, he was subordinate to Rav Ashi. Okay, so I'll say it's a beautiful, beautiful Gemara. So I'm sorry? So apparently, even though they were considered to be a group, Rav Ashi was the greater one. Says the Gemara. Remember again, when we're talking about Torah Gidol Makom Echad, we don't mean that this is the only great person. We mean this is the greatest person. He doesn't have an equal. There is no peer. To which the Gemara says that at the end of the day, so we have Moshe Rabbeinu, Rebbe, and Rav Ashi. Amazing. Says the Mishnah. Well, it's an interesting halach over here. Cheresh Romeis v'nirmaz. So I'll say, says the Mishnah, a Cheresh, Rashi says over here, Romeis v'nirmaz, Mashu Romeis kayim, or Mashu Romzim lov u'misratze bo kayim, Remiza b'yado b'rosha. So also remember, Cheresh is a deaf mute. So the Cheresh goes ahead and literally motions. He does Remiza with his hands and with his head. So he makes some type of gesticulation, some type of movement to indicate his ratzon. So says the Mishnah, what a Cheresh is able to communicate with Remiza, and what he's able to understand from others through Remiza, ultimately creates transactional reality. So he could transact certain things through Remiza, through this motioning of the head and the hands. Or Ben Beseira Omer Kofetz V'nikbats. Ben Beseira says no, he need not motion with his heads and with his head and with his hands, but rather he could even rely on kfitza. Rashi says kfitza, akimas sfasayim, wording certain things with his mouth. So both says, so just so you understand, so Remiza is considered to be a higher form of communication than kfitza. So motioning with one's head and one's hands is considered to be a higher form of communication than simply mouthing certain things. So therefore, again, the Tanakama of the Mishnah holds that a Cheresh can transact certain things, but it has to be through Remiza, through motioning of the head and the hands. Ben Beseira says the Cheresh can even accomplish certain things through kfitza, even just through mouthing certain things. So, however, the Mishnah says all of this is b'metaltalin, but all of this, B'meseira says, is only with movable property. We'll discuss in the Gemara what that means. So, literally, the Cheresh has the ability to sell property or to buy property according to the Tanakama through Remiz, according to Ben Beseira through kfitza, through mouthing something. Ha-pa'utos mekach mekchan u'memkaran memkar b'metaltalin. So we'll say pa'utos are minors, children. Minors, children who sell property, what they sell is sold, and what they buy is bought, and all of this refers to movable property. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman, machlokis b'metaltalin, aval begittin divrei hakol b'remiza. So says Rav Nachman, The machlokes between the Tanakama and Ben Beseira is only regarding metaltlin, movable property. Tanakama will say that movable property can only be sold through remiza, and Ben Beseira is saying even through kfitza. On the other hand, when it comes to a get of Gittin, everyone agrees that the only way for a chirish to affect Gittin is through remiza. Now, what does this mean by Gittin? Take a look at Rashi, first wide line in Rashi, Aval Gittin, the kaimal on chirish shenasa. Everyone agrees that if a chirish married, mission is charish, meaning he got married when he was already a chirish, imratza lahotzi yotzi, kashim shenichnas beremiza kin motzi beremiza. So we'll say, we actually saw this earlier. The idea over here is that a chirish could affect marriage, but it's rabbinic marriage. So how does a chirish affect marriage? Through expression of das to get married. How does he express das to get married? Through remiza, through motioning of the head, motioning of the hands. The same way he gets married through remiza, he also can get divorced through remiza. So what the Gemara or Rav Nachman is suggesting is that the machlokes between Ben Beseira and the Tanakama is only by the sale of movable property. That's where Ben Beseira will say that kfitza, mouthing words, is enough to affect the sale of metaltlin. But when it comes to a get, when it comes to rabbinic divorce for a cherish, everyone will agree, including Ben Beseira, that kfitza, mouthing something, is not enough. Rather, again, you need what the Mishnah calls remiza, a motioning of the head, a motioning of the hands. So the Gemara says, Pshita, that's obvious. But the Mishnah said it explicitly. The Mishnah said that this machlokes Ben Beseira and the Chacham is only by movable property. To which the Gemara says, which makes it sound like everyone agrees that by a get you will require a remiza. To which the Gemara says, what would you have thought? From metaltalin, you might have thought that the Mishnah should be read that the machlokes applies even by metaltalin, but that Ben Beseira and the Tanakama disagree even by Gittin. Kamash Malan, that is not the case. Kamash Malan, that by Gittin everyone agrees that you require remiza. The only machlokes is by metaltalin, where again the Tanakama says you need remiza. Ben Beseira says you could even use kafitza. Others have a different version of this exchange. The Amr of Nachman, machlokes b'metaltalin kach machlokes begittin. Shabbos say in this second version, Rav Nachman is saying is the same way that Ben Beseira and Tanakama argue by metaltalin, they also argue by Gittin. And literally again, Ben Beseira will say that kfitza is enough by Gittin as well. V'ha'anan b'metaltalin. But the Mishnah says that this is only the metaltalin, to which we have to say ema af b'metaltalin. Read the Mishnah to say even by metaltalin, this is a machlokes. So we'll say, so two versions of the machlokes between Ben Beseira and Tanakama. We paskin, by the way, that when a cherish affects kiddushin, which he does have the ability to do, it's rabbinic kiddushin, he affects it b'remiza, and we paskin like the first version of this, namely, that everyone will agree that the same way that the marriage is affected through remiza, it can only be dissolved through remiza as well, not through kfitza. Says the Gemara, hapu'utos mekchan mekach, o memkaran metaltalin. So remember the Mishnah said that children have the ability to sell off the property, and the way they sell it off, ultimately, they have the ability to sell off. What they sell is sold, what they purchase is bought, and all of it applies to movable property. Says the Gemara, va'ad kama. Now, what the Gemara is asking over here is the following: how old do children have to be in order to affect a transaction? We'll say the novelty over here is that generally we assume that the actions of a child are not legally meaningful. Here we're saying they are legally meaningful. There obviously has to be a cutoff, meaning if a 3-year-old sells stuff, obviously not. So how old does a child have to be in order to affect some level of transactional reality? So Machli Rav Yehuda Rav Yitzchak Breder Kivar Shis Kivar Shev, like 6 or 7 years old. Rav Kana Amar Kivar Shev Kivar Timni. So Rav Kana said like 7 or 8. V'mas Nisatana Kivar Tisha Kivar Eser. In the Brisa we learned like 9 or 10. Rav Kana, I'm sorry, Velo Pligi, and they're not arguing. Kol Chad V'Chad Lefi Chorfei. We'll say the idea, they're not arguing. What they're talking about over here is at what point in time is a child sharp enough to be able to go ahead and understand what it is that he's doing. So what they're essentially saying is some children are sharp enough at the age of 6, and some children are sharp enough at the age of 10. It depends on the intellectual astuteness or ability of the child. The time am I. Now, why is it that Chazal said that a child could go ahead and sell and purchase property? Meaning, again, normally we should say the transaction of a child is meaningless. Rabbi Abba ben Yaakov, Rabbi Yochanan, mishum kedei chayav. Rashi says over here, mishum kedei chayav. It's the fifth wide line in Rashi. Dei lav zevina lo mizbini le mizoni v'lo zabni minei. Both said because sometimes the children do not have an adult guardian to rely on, and if their transactions are not valid, what's going to happen? No one's going to want to buy from them, and no one's going to want to sell to them. Therefore, in order to ensure that the children could literally exist, that they could survive, so Lemaisa, again, we go ahead and we allow their transactions to be binding. So says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Abba Bar Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So Abba Bar Yaakov said in Rabbi Yochanan, I'm sorry, B'shum Kedei Chayav. So we'll say, so once we call Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara just brings up another teaching. Vayomer la'asher, so here the Gemara is quoting from the Pasuk in Malachim Beis. Vayomer la'asher al hamel tacha, Hotze levush l'chol of the habal, vayotze lahem hamalbush. You must remember one of the most terrible idolatries, not terrible, one of the most rampant idolatries that existed during the times of Malchus, Yisrael Malchus, was the Baal. So here the pasuk is saying that he said to the person who was in charge of the Maltacha, take out clothing for all the servants of the Baal. So says the Gemara, my Maltacha. What's Maltacha? What does that refer to? Rabbi Yochanan, davar hanimlal v'nimtach. Something about say that is rolled and stretched. It refers to fine linen. Maltacha is fine linen, something that is rolled and something that could be stretched. Ki aser Rabdimi Rabbi Yochanan. This is actually interesting. Shiger lo bunyim ben nunyim. The Rebbe, so we'll say bunyim ben nunyim was a person. Rashi says over here. Bunyim ben nunyim Yisrael ashir hava. He was a very rich man. So this rich man used to send gifts to Rabbi. So Bunyam ben Nunyim sent Rabbi the following: Sivni, v'chomas, salsala, umalmala. Suppose say so. Bunyam ben Nunyim used to send to Rabbi clothing that was made out of these very expensive materials. Sivni, chomos, salsala, malmala. Sivni, v'chomas, ke'amaguza upalge da amaguza. So we'll say the sivni and the chumas, the fabric was so fine that literally you could fold it up to be the size of 1.5 nuts. So the idea is the fabric itself was so fine that when you folded it up, it would be tiny. Salsala malmala, the material salsala malmala, ke pistaka upalgi de pistaka. But if you look at Rashi says pistaka is golnut. Others translate this as an acorn. So the same idea that the fabric was so fine that when you rolled it up, when you folded it up, it would become tiny like a nut. My malmala. So what's malmala? Davar hanimlal v'nimtach, something that is rolled and ultimately stretched. Fine. Says the Gemara. V'ta'usan ad kamas. Well, say now. The Gemara is a very interesting discussion, which again is an interesting discussion in general about the laws of Onah. The laws of Onah are such that the halacha understands that in any marketplace there's never a fixed number for any particular item. So meaning you could go to two different stores and want to buy, or two different vendors and want to buy the same item, and you're going to get a price differential. That's because the marketplace allows for some level of price fluctuation. However, in a transaction, if the price itself is so off, so then under certain circumstances you could void the transaction. This is the concept of onah. So onah means either both say, now people think that onah is only overcharging. It's not just overcharging, it's also undercharging. So for example, if a vendor ended up underselling something by mistake, then again, we'll see. So the Gemara says, so now the Gemara is asking over here is now that we've established that a child has the ability to go ahead and sell property, sell metaltal, movable property, for the sake of sustaining himself. So what's the halacha if it turns out that there was a mistake in the transaction? And what size of a mistake allows for the transaction to be voided? So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yonah, Amar Rabbi Zera, Achisus kigadol. It's the same halacha by an adult, namely a sixth. We'll say, take a look at Rashi. Achisus kigadol, Achisus kana hakona, umachzirona, Yosef mishus batal mechas. So we'll say the halacha by onah is like this. Again, we're going to simplify somewhat complicated halachos, but the basic idea is the following. If you overcharge or undercharge by up to a sixth, meaning a sixth or less, then the halacha is the transaction stands the difference, meaning the undercharge or overcharge amount, has to be returned. Has to be returned either to the vendor or the purchaser, depending on what happened. If it's over a sixth, then by definition the transaction is voided. So Rabbi Yonah makes the suggestion that the transaction of a child is no different than the transaction of an adult. Boyabaye, matanasamai. So here's an interesting child. So what happens if instead of going ahead and selling metaltalin, the child gifts metaltalin? What is the halacha? Is such a gift binding or not? Rashi says, metaltalin mai, metaltalin mushum kidei chayiv hu zivini in matana lo. Ovdum matana sanai matana da abdulay naich nafshe. We'll say this is fast. This is the second time we've seen something like this. Now, what's the shaila? The shaila is do we say that the only reason Chazal allowed the child to engage in some type of transaction is so that the child could exist, meaning he's got to have food. So therefore, we only allow him to sell off his metaltalin, but matana, which has nothing to do with what? Which has nothing to do with matana, which has nothing to do with kidei chayim, supporting him, he's not allowed to do. Or do we say that one of the reasons why people give gifts is why? To curry favor with others, so that when they need something, they'll be able to go ahead and get it. In which case, again, for the Ketanim, that's it's amazing, by the way, this is the second time we've seen this concept. That gift giving is never fully altruistic. It's quite interesting from a psychological perspective how Chazal looked at gift. Very interesting. In any event, so the question is if the Katan gives a gift, is that gift binding or not? So Mar Bar Avashi Amar Matana Matana. Mar Bar Avashi said yes, the gift is a gift, and Mar Bar Avashi seems to subscribe to the idea that what? That Aloch Lamaisa, a gift is important for the Ketanim also, because to curry favor with others is exceptionally important. On the other hand, I'm sorry, I skipped. So Rav Yemar Amar in Matana Matana. So Rav Yemar said that the matana is not a matana. Mar Bar Avashi Amar Matana Matana. Mar Bar Avashi went ahead and said the matana is matana. Afchuha v'shajruha lekamei de Rav Mordechai. So we'll say when the students reported this exchange, they reversed the names. So they brought this for Rav Mordechai. Amar le Mordechai said, Amar le zilu amru lebar mar. Go and say to the son of our master, Lav hachi ava ovda, meaning, so Rav Mordechai is saying, what you're telling me over is wrong. He understood that either they heard it wrong or they mixed up the names. Because he said, go tell the son of my master. Rashi says over here, Zilu, Amar lebar mar, libno shel Rebbe, to Rav Mordechai talmido shel Rav Ashi haya bekama makomos. So what's the idea? So he said, go tell your Rebbe, or go tell the son of your Rebbe, Lav hachi ava uvda. Did not the following episode happen? Ki avakoi mar chad karei a'ara, v'chad karei adarga. One time our master, Rav Ashi, had one foot on the ground and one foot on the step. Va'amarna le matana samai, and we asked him, what's the status of a child's matana? And what did he say? Va'amarlan, and he said to us, matana matana. The matana of a katan is a binding matana. Achos matna shchivnera, whether the child is a shchivnera, va'achos matnas, by whether the child is healthy. Achos matana meruba, va'achos matana muetes. So Rav Ashi is on record as saying what? Rav Ashi is on record as saying that lemaisa, again, the matana is a good matana. So Rav Mordechai says, go back and explain that you mixed up your people. You mixed up your people because Rav Ashi is on record as saying that the matana of a child is in fact a proper matana. Says the Mishnah. We'll say this is a beautiful sugi now we're getting into. Eile dvarim amru mipnei darkei shalom. We'll say the following is a list of enactments. Now understand, we're transitioning a little bit because up until now, what have we been speaking about? Tikkun olam, right? Now there's a chiluk between tikkun olam and tikkun olam, right? So this is they're both important. They're both important, but this is tikkun olam, not tikkun olam. Although again, I'm just kidding. There is an intersection between the two. Now we're transitioning to something called darkei shalom. So we'll say darkei shalom is a little bit different. So tikkun olam means society has to run a certain way. And for the benefit of greater society, the rabbis made a series of enactments. Darkei shalom are enactments made for the preservation of internal peace. Internal peace. They're not societal things. They're literally, again, internal communal things. So watch this. This is a very exciting sugya. So these are the following enactments because of Darkei Shalom. Number one, so Kohen Rishon, the Achar of Levi, the Achar of Yisrael, the Darkei Shalom. So we'll say enactment number one. Kohen gets the first aliyah Levi gets the second one. Yisrael the third. Why? Mipnei darki shalom. Rashi says, in order, see, it's an amazing thing. Apparently, fighting over kibudim is not a new phenomenon. I know it comes. No, not in this shul. I'm saying in other shuls. Right, it's happened. Right, the Gabbai know nothing of this. So what happens? So again, so the Gemara says. So Mishnah said, Chazal already understood that this is going to be a point of contention. So what happens? And I both say to never cast aspersions on Klal Yisrael. The limud zchus is, remember, this is, you don't even have to get into people's egos or covet. There are times where people are chiyuvim for aliyos. So a person's a chiyuv for an aliyah. Let's see, you can have a situation where you have multiple chiyuvim. So what do you do in certain situations like that? Who gets, and you can have also multiple people with the same type of chiyuv. So what happens? And so Chazal had a way of kind of circumventing the machlokes of saying, here is the order of aliyos. Rashi says over here, since it's a takanas chazal, look, because what the rabbi said, blame it on the rabbis. What the Shulchan Aruch paskins. So this is the order. People aren't going to say, well, I want the first aliyah. All right, you're a Yisrael. You can't have the first aliyah. So hopefully it diminishes machlokes. Next, so ma'arvin mebayis arshnei darki shalom. We'll say next takana was the following. Going back to our Erevin days. Remember again, there's something called the Erev Chatzeros. So very quickly, Erev Chatzeros means you have multiple homes open up into a common courtyard. Midarais, you can carry from the homes into that courtyard because there's just a yachid. Midrabanan, whenever you have multiple homes opening up into a common area, Chazal said it looks like a Rosh Hashanah, and therefore you have to do what's called an Erev Chatzeros. Erev Chatzeros means you take a little bit of food from everyone in the courtyard, you deposit that food in one of the homes. Where, as from a Jewish perspective, by the Gentiles they say home is where your heart is. By Jews we say home is where your food is. Right? So the idea over here is we take everyone's food, we place it in one home. That makes that home the home of all of the residents of the courtyard, making essentially the courtyard the property of one of the homes, relegating it to the full-blown status of Rosh Hashanah. The Mishnah says something fascinating. Don't change the location of the Eruv. We leave the Eruv Chatzeros in the same house. Because we'll say, what happens if you move the Eruv Chatzeros? What's wrong with my house? Right? my father had the Eruv, my grandfather had the Eruv, right? And now suddenly you're taking it away from me. So what happens? So we leave the Eruv in the same house. You don't switch it around. Mibnei darki shalom. Amud beis. Nun tes. Bar shu karav la'ama mismal rishon mibnei darki shalom. We'll say next case. The way it used to work was the following. I'm just doing this quickly because of time, and we'll see this more in the Gemara. So we'll say, if you can imagine the following: you have a body of water, and you have multiple fields next to that body of water. What they would do is they would dig a channel off the river to bring the water to the field. Now, the way each field would get the water was, if you can imagine, there's the larger body of water, there's the channel. Each field would dig like a sub-channel off the major channel to pull the water into their field. What each field would also have was called an irrigation pit, which is a large pit that's able to contain a reserve amount of water in the event that for some reason the channel dried up. So the only way that, let's say there's fields A, B, C, D, and E. So the only way that field A could fill up its irrigation pit is essentially to dam up the channel and to prevent the channel from flowing to the other fields. Now, let's say you've got 5 fields that feed off that same channel. The shaila is what? Who gets to dam off the channel first? So the Mishnah said, Mibnei darki shalom, they said, the first field, we go by proximity. As we go by proximity, the first field on the route of the channel gets to dam it off first to fill off its irrigation pit, and so on and so forth. Mifnei darki shalom. Next, this is also fascinating. Mesudos chayu ba'ofos udagim yeshet mishum gezel mifnei darki shalom. We'll say, you can't, so listen to this halacha. Let's say I'm a fisherman, or I'm a hunter, and I leave fishing nets in the ocean. Or for that matter, again, I leave traps in the forest, and my traps acquire something. But like, technically speaking, when your fishing net acquires something in the ocean, that's not yours. Meaning, let me say it differently. You don't actually halachically own it until when? Until you take possession of it. Mashicha. That's the way it works. Any type of metal, Mashicha. So technically speaking, if you leave a trap in the forest, and you catch a bear, and I come and I take your bear, technically speaking, that's not gezel. That's not theft, because you didn't acquire it. The rabbis are into that because of darki shalom. Anything in your trap belongs to you, and I can't take it. It's rabbinic theft. Rabbi Yossi Omer Gezel Gomer. Rabbi Yossi says no. In fact, the trap does acquire. Again, we'll discuss again what Rabbi Yossi means. Rabbi Yossi says no. Whatever your trap acquires for you is actually yours. And if you go ahead and somebody else takes from that trap, it is Gezel Gomer. Metzias Chere Shot to the Katan. We'll say similarly, if a Chere Shot to the Katan, these individuals who lack capacity, they go ahead and they find something. So the halacha is, we'll say, so technically speaking, if a Katan finds $100 bill on the street and he picks it up, and I grab it from his hands, that's not real gezel, it's not biblical gezel, because at the end of the day, again, a katan doesn't have the capacity to acquire. So, however, again, the rabbi said, "Mipnei darki shalom," you can't do that. Whatever a cherishot a katan acquire, it's theirs. Rabbi Yossi Omer Gezel Gomer. Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's not true. Actually, they do have the ability to acquire, and if you take it from them, it's full-blown theft. Ani hamanaki barosh is I suppose another fascinating case. The way you go ahead, if you've ever seen, you see this in our show all the time, it's amazing. How do they harvest olives? The way they harvest olives, Rabbi say, is they hit the branches, right? They spread out like a cloth underneath the tree, and they go ahead and they hit the branches, and the olives come down. So in this case over here, you have an ani. You have a poor person who's going ahead and collecting from one of the ties. He's collecting olives from one of the trees. He's up in the tree. He's shaking that tree. The olives are coming down. I was like, technically speaking, those olives that come down and fall on the cloth below the tree, technically, they're not the anis. Right? Because not the anis until when? Until he actually acquires it. However, midrabanan, we say that what you shake is yours. Right? Whatever you get down from the tree is yours. And if somebody else comes and takes it, it's gezel midrabanan. Mipnei darki shalom. I'm sorry? So we'll see, this is not really like, this is something, this would be meaning more like Meiser Ani. Somebody is designating a tree as Hefker, because remember, Leket, Shikha, and Peah usually only buy standing grain. So the Gemara goes weiter. Rabbi Yossi Omer Gezel Gomer. Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's not true, it's actual theft. It's actual theft. Ein memachin biyad aniyeh obdei kochavim beleket Shikha Peah. And the last halacha is, technically speaking, leket, shechicha, and peah, which I will say again refers, remember, leket is if you go ahead and you drop stalks, shechicha, you forget a sheaf, peah, you have to leave a corner of your field. Technically speaking, these are tithes for Jews. But if indigent Gentiles come into my field and begin to collect my leket, shechicha, and peah, I do not prevent them from doing that. Why? Mipnei darki shalom. Ultimately, I will say for the sake of communal peace. Says the Gemara. So I'll say this is really fascinating sugya. So let's go ahead and take a look. So now the Gemara is going to start with Kohen Levi Yisrael min hanimili. How do I know that Kohen reads first, Levi afterwards, and Yisrael after that? Amarav Masna do Amakra. The pasuk says, Vayichtov Moshe as Torah azos vayitna ala kohanim b'nei Levi. Because the pasuk says Moshe took this Torah and he gave it to the kohanim, the sons of Levi. Atu anu lo yedana de kohanim b'nei Levi. Do I not know that the kohanim are the sons of Levi? Why do I need that to say that? Ella kohen bereisha v'hadar Levi. To teach me that what Rabbi say that when in the order of aliyos it's kohen and then Levi. So it's kohanim b'nei Levi. To teach me order kohanim first, Leviim second. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yitzchak naf chamar mehacha. Rabbi Yitzchak says, no, we learn it out from here. V'nikshu kohanim b'nei Levi. The kohanim, the sons of Levi, will come close. Atu anan lo yedin the kohanim b'nei Levi. Do we not know the kohanim are the sons of Levi? Ella kohen bereisha v'hadar Levi. Rather, it comes to teach us that what? A kohen is first, and then a Levi. Rav Ashi says from here, b'nei Amram Aaron and Moshe v'yavdil Aaron lahakdisho kodesh kadoshim. But yet the pasuk says again, and the sons of Amram are Aaron and Moshe, and Aaron was separated to be sanctified Kodesh Kadashim. That shows us that what? That Aaron comes first, Kohen first, Levi second. We'll say here is the limud, Vikidashto. The halacha will say this is the primary pasuk from which we learn out the kedimos of the Kohen. Pasuk Vikidashto, you shall sanctify the Kohen. What do we learn from there? L'chol davar shebekdusha. The Kohen is sanctified for every holy matter. Namely, Tana Debei Rabbi Shabbosai teaches us that whenever you have anything of ritual importance, the Kohen always comes first. Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel. V'kidashta. What does it mean you shall sanctify him? L'chol davar shebekdusha liftoach rishon. So the Chodavar Shebekdusha. The Kiddush also means that the coin comes first for all matters of Kedusha. Liv Toach Rishon. Rabbi say he gets the first aliyah. Levarich Rishon. He leads benching. Belito Mana Yafer Rishon. The coin is entitled to the nicest portion of food. Amali Abaye, the Rabbi Yosef. Mibnei Darki Shalom Doraisi. So Abaye says, Rabbi Yosef, I don't understand. So based on what you're telling me then, the Mishnah makes it sound like the coin goes first for an aliyah because of Darki Shalom. It's not Darki Shalom. What is it? It's a Doraisa. The Kiddush teaches me that a Kohen goes first for everything. That's not, I will say, that's not rabbinic Darki Shalom. That's a Doraisa. To which the Gemara says, you're right. Amrali Doraisa, or Mipne, I'm sorry. Not Mipne Darki Shalom Doraisa. I'm sorry. Amrali Doraisa, or Mipne Darki Shalom. So he answered, you're right, it's Doraisa. But do you know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu went ahead and made the Kohen first for everything? Mipnei Darki Shalom. Ultimately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to have a peaceful, harmonious existence. The Gemara says, but one second. Kala Torah Kula Namimnei Darki Shalom. He will say this is such a beautiful statement. But the entire Torah is focused on Darki Shalom. D'chsiv, Dirachea Darchi Noam. V'chol Nesivo Seha Shalom. I will say, the Pasuk says, its ways are pleasant, and all of its pathways are peace. So you're making it sound like over here that this is like a one-off Darkei Shalom thing. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants his entire Torah to be Deracha Darkei Noam, to be a pleasant and beautiful Shalom Dik Torah. Amra Abaye Lichidemar. Rather, Abaye says, you're right. The Darkei Shalom piece comes for the following. So look at Rashi. So let's listen to this. So the Darkei Shalom comes for the following idea. This Sanya, we learned, this is very interesting. We'll say if you are eating with someone, and it's just two people eating together, so when one person pauses, let's say to take a drink or to clear his throat, proper halachic etiquette is that the other person stops eating as well. So when my other person, my dining companion, stops eating, proper etiquette says not stop eating like for the meal, just the pause. When he pauses, I pause. Shlosha in mamtinim. But if you have three people eating together, when one of them stops, you need not pause. Habotzea hu poshit yado tchila. We'll say the person who makes hamotzi is the one who has the right to take the condiments for the bread first. But I will say if a person is going ahead and making hamotzi and he wants to go ahead and yield the first right at the condiments of the stuff at the food to people who's someone greater than him, his Rebbe is there, someone else is there, he has the right to yield, he has the ability to yield that right. Va'amar mar, Allah lo shanu, I'm sorry, va'amar mar, Allah lo shanu ela b'su'uda, ava bebeis hakneses lo da'asilin suye. We'll say, when do you have the right to yield? When do you have the right to say to your Rebbe or to someone greater than you, please, you take the salt first, you take the condiments first? That's only in your house. So by Yisud you have the right to yield. But in shul, you don't have the right to yield. In other words, the shul, let's say the Kohen's in shul and his Rebbe's in shul, the Kohen doesn't have the right to say to his Rebbe, please, you take the first aliyah. Why not? The asilin suye. Because ultimately, again, it will create machlokes. So we'll say, lav dafka create machlokes in that moment. But once you set a precedent that the Kohen has the ability to yield his aliyah, you open the door ultimately for all kinds of machlokes. So the Gemara says, Amar Masna. Actually, we'll say, you know what? We'll stop over here. We'll pick up over here in Mirat Hashem tomorrow with Amar Masna. Shkoyach.